Hi, my name's Cameron Waring. I'm a precision driver and driver trainer. I'm going to demonstrate to you just how important shock absorbers are to the safety of your car.
We've taken 4 Holden Commodores, a 2003 VY model on original equipment shock absorbers, a VX Commodore on shocks with 80,000 Ks of wear, a VT Commodore that has 140,000 Ks of wear on its shock absorbers, and we're comparing them against this. Another 2003 VY Commodore riding on MONROE GT gas reflex shock absorbers. You can learn more about the technology behind these shocks elsewhere in this DVD. We've put the cars through 3 gruelling tests. A slalom at 80 km an hour, a collision avoidance manoeuvre both at 60 and 80 Ks, plus a braking test also at 60 and 80 km an hour. We're comparing them using a technique called ghosting, which allows you to see exactly how each vehicle performs against MONROE GT gas reflex under the same conditions, side by side. By the end of this DVD, I'm confident you will understand much more about what happens when shock absorbers are worn, and the importance of good shock absorbers in the dynamic safety of your vehicle.
As you're watching this, remember that we're using a racetrack in controlled conditions. We can afford to take some chances, but you're sharing a road with other road users. You can't afford to take any chances.
Here I am in the MONROE car, and the hats are spaced at about 25 metres apart and going through at 80 Ks. A couple of things to look for is look at how the nose of the car points in so nicely and the tail just tucks in with it. But also look at the steering input. The hands go to just past 12 o'clock each time. We'll pay attention to that. And here we are comparing the MONROE car to the car fitted with original equipment shock absorbers. And this will be interesting to see the relationship of the rear of both cars, but you'll notice how the front of the car is really pitching too as it turns in. The nose really digs in, the hands are going past 12 o'clock quite significantly, and you can really see the yaw developing. Now we're comparing the MONROE car with a car that has shocks that are 80,000 Ks old. The hats are still 25 metres apart and we're going through at 80 km an hour. And look how the front of the car automatically starts pushing wide, and the back of the car is really slewing wide as well. And the car is getting very unbalanced and the steering inputs are huge. Now we're comparing the MONROE car to a car that's got shocks that are 140,000 Ks old. And I'm really looking to see how the nose of the car points and if the tail stays compliant, and clearly on the first hat you can see how the silver car just keeps going wide of the point. In fact, it's inconsistent. This is a very unsafe car. 2 more hats and the car will just spin. This is a collision avoidance test, and the MONROE car is going to complete this exercise at 60 km an hour. We're looking to see how the car pitches as it turns whilst under brakes. And it's done it very, very easily. This collision avoidance test, again at 60 km an hour, compares the MONROE car with original equipment shocks. You'll see as the car turns in, it doesn't do it quite as tidily as the MONROE car, and at the end it rocks as it comes to a stop and doesn't absorb the energy. Now we're comparing the MONROE car with the VX Commodore with shocks that are 80,000 Ks old. We should see quite a significant difference in the way that the car not only turns in, but look at the difference when it stops. Over 2 metres difference. Now we're comparing MONROE with the VT Commodore, and these shocks are 140,000 Ks old. This exercise is only 60 km an hour, and look how it's so hard to control in the one lane. Half a car's width difference. The MONROE car now completes the collision avoidance test at 80 km an hour. This is a very difficult test for a car, but you'll see with a little bit of impulse from the ABS, the car comfortably comes to a stop. This collision avoidance test is the MONROE car versus the VY Commodore and original equipment shocks. Again at 80 Ks, this is a real test for a car. Using the same points to brake and turn, you can see how the ABS just works very hard and knocks those 2 cones over right at the end. The collision avoidance test with the MONROE versus the VX Commodore with shocks that are 80,000 k's old. You'll see quite a dynamic difference here as the cars turning and the ABS will pulsate quite violently and clearly go through the hats. The car has just ploughed through those hats. Imagine if that was an intersection. This collision avoidance exercise compares the MONROE car with the VT that's done 140,000 k's. Entering at 80 kilometres an hour, this is hard work anyway, but look as the car just flies across the intersection and straight through those hats. Imagine if they were children. This is a standard brake test done at 60 kilometres an hour. We're looking to see how well the car can pull up and its composure under braking. It should be nice and still and straight. Car pulls up very well. The brake test and comparing the MONROE car with the VY Commodore fitted with original equipment shocks. Coming into this exercise at 60 k's and applying the brakes very hard at the same point, you can see the original equipment car takes longer to pull up and bounces at the end. The brake test at 60 kilometres an hour compares the MONROE car with shocks that have done 80,000 kilometres. Coming into this exercise at 60 k's and applying the brakes at the hats, and the 80,000 k shocks just take at least a few more metres to pull up. The brake test at 60 kilometres an hour compares MONROE with the VT Commodore and 140,000 k's. Applying the brakes at the same point, the older shocks have a devastating effect on stopping distance and take a lot longer to pull up. The brake test at 80 kilometres an hour, and the MONROE car is going to enter this exercise at a full 80 k's and dive on the brakes very hard at the entry. The car pulls up very comfortably and almost time to spare. A very safe emergency braking manoeuvre. Here the MONROE car is compared with the VY Commodore fitted with original equipment shocks. Coming into this braking exercise at 80 kilometres an hour, the cars will apply the brakes at the same point. We're looking for how it absorbs that bump and the stopping distance, and it takes a lot longer to pull up. The brake test at 80 kilometres an hour compares the MONROE car with the VX Commodore, and these shocks are 80,000 k's old. Coming into this exercise and braking over that bump, the car takes a lot longer to pull up. That is not a safe situation to be in. Now looking from the driver's perspective in the VX Commodore, you want to enter this exercise at 80 k's and pull up before those hats. That indicates an intersection and we just went through it. This brake test compares the MONROE car with the VT fitted with shocks that have done 140,000 k's. Coming into this exercise at 80 kilometres an hour, you'll see an enormous difference in stopping distance. Straight through the intersection. That bump just caused the brakes to lock and send us straight through the intersection. Now from a driver's point of view, have a look as we enter this intersection, hit that bump, we skid and bang straight through.